Hi friends, I'm Liz. Welcome back to our channel, Bookworm Couple. I know I say our channel and it's just me today. No Robby next to me, which feels kind of funny, but it's because I am here to talk about a book that Robby has yet to read. I say yet to read because it's on my list to give him. He'll get there eventually. He's starting from the very beginning of the Sarah J. Maas universe. Today we're going to talk about House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. I waited a while to do this video because I just felt like people needed some time to read it. I know it was such an anticipated release for so many people, and maybe there are new people that are starting to get into it soonish, so I just wanted to have enough time for everyone to let it sink in, myself included, because this was my most anticipated book of not only this year, but like years. I've been so excited to continue this series for the last few years. The one before this came out, I think, 2 years prior, so I've been waiting a long time to continue the story. So that being said, that's why we're here now, and I'm really excited to talk about it. Let me put this book down because she's massive. First of all, the book is massive, which I was pumped about. I feel like anytime I love an author or love a series, if I see a book that is big, like this one is how many pages? Let's see. Close to 1,000, I would think. 838 pages. So that's a pretty big book, which, like I said, if it's a series or an author that I love, the bigger the book, the better. I'm just so excited. I want to be in the world as long as possible, and that very much was what this was. Overall, I had a great time reading this book, like an absolute great time. I went in honestly a little bit nervous because I was anticipating it so much, and because it's been a while. I love this author, and Sarah J. Maas's popularity has really grown. At first I was like, oh my gosh, what if this is the one that's like sucks? Like, what if this is the book? Like, we've been in it so long and we love this, and I've talked this author up and these series up so much. Like, what if this is the one that it's like not good? What if it's just like not enjoyable? So I was like so nervous with that. And then also I think I was a little bit nervous for how big the fandom has grown, because I think anytime that happens, you bring in a lot of opinions and a lot of feelings. So it took me a minute to get into, not because of the book, but because I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm here again. Oh my gosh, my favorite characters are on this page. Oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? Oh my gosh, what if I don't like it? Like, I was just so much going on. So it took me a minute to get into, and then eventually I hit a point where I just turned the switch off and just fell. And I think that's probably the best way to experience any of Sarah J. Maas writings, especially any of the Crescent City books, because you're always getting so much information. And so I just kind of fell into it, and it's hard for me to think anything but, like, I just had enjoyment the entire time. Like, I was having the time of my life reading this book, because then I hit the point of, like, instead of like, oh my gosh, I'm can't believe I'm here, of like, oh my gosh, I'm here with my favorite characters, we're in this world again, things are happening, we're moving forward, I'm not rereading a book that I've already read, this is all new, and I'm literally getting chills. That's so exciting. So I had a grand old time. I think the journey was really cool. I think there was, classic of a Sarah J. Maas Crescent City novel, a lot of lore dumping and a lot of world building. I read the first two books like a week or two prior to reading this one for the first time, and I'm really glad I did, because I got back into the style of this. Like I said, it's a lot of world building and a lot of information, but the characters and the character relationships and the character journeys are so wonderful. So I think even if that like world building and like a lot of lore isn't really for you, I think there's enjoyment in this series as well, and in this book especially. This book I feel like is a very good culmination of everything she's created with the first two, just like even larger, even more. So that being said, had a great time. I think we can get into spoilers now. If you haven't read this book, or honestly, if you haven't read any Sarah J. Maas, if you haven't read Crescent City specifically, definitely turn this off. Go read Crescent City. I would recommend reading all Sarah J. Maas books. I started with ACOTAR, did Crescent City, and then Throne of Glass. But you can do whatever you want. Anyways, if you haven't read House of Flame and Shadow, turn this off, read it, come back. Read all the books first, and then come back, and then we'll talk about it. But if you have, and you're ready to like chat about it, tune in. Okay, so spoilers, potentially. There's gonna be so many spoilers. There's so many spoilers in this book. So many spoilers in this book. This book was overwhelming in a way that there was so much happening. I was refreshing my brain before I filmed this to remember all the things that happened, and I took little notes throughout, but really not that many, I think, just because I was just in it. I was in the book. I didn't want to pause to write anything down. So I was refreshing myself of like, you know, with a little summary of the book, and I was like, wow, wow, yeah, so much happens. And I do think that was one of the notes that I wrote where it was like, I'm not even halfway through. I had started taking more notes in the beginning of this book and then noted that I was not even halfway through. And like all the things that had happened already is wild. We jump right into prologue scene. So we're in Crescent City proper with the Autumn King and the Asteri, and then we get a little bit of the boys in the dungeon, which was a real bummer because like I knew obviously the boys were taken. We had Rune, Vaxian, and Hunt that were captured at the end of the second book, and starting with them I was like, oh man, the boys. But then we go right into the crossover and we get Bryce in the world of Akhtar, which was so exciting. I have stopped reading people's reviews of this book before I really even gave my review because I am one to, like I said, I had a great time. I'm a very emotional reader. I'm a very emotional reviewer. And so a lot of times people's reviews will be about certain things that I didn't tune in on, and so I'll feel like I needed to adjust my review because I want to sound smart. I stopped reading reviews, but the few that I did see and the consistency that I saw was people being upset that the crossover wasn't more than it was. And to be honest, it's not an Akhtar book. So I think we got a pretty good chunk of our favorite characters in there. And I think the trio that was together was really, really interesting. Seeing Bryce interact with Reese, of course, was great. And I feel like there's definitely connection there, like familial-ish, but specifically like so many of my notes are Bryce and Nesta, and the perfection of those two very hardcore women like butting heads, but also like with the like respect, you know. And it was like exactly what I wanted out of that kind of a confrontation, because it could have been a really toxic and negative thing, you know, pitting these two women together, but instead it was a like, we both have our own individual strengths and we're very solid in them, and we like go to butt heads. I will fight for Nesta till my dying day. I love that character so much. I love the complexity of her. I love the realness of seeing a character battle depression, and that's been such a beautiful healing thing for me, and I know so many other people with that character specifically. And then, you know, Bryce has had her own battles in that same emotional state as well. So we have that from the past, but then we also have these two incredibly empowered women, and watching them respect one another while also kind of like not knowing who the other was. Obviously we know as the readers who these two women are, and seeing them connect, not knowing who the other was, of like very well being like, I'm this powerful person, and then the other was like, well, I'm this powerful person, and then I don't know, I'm not explaining this well, but I loved their connection. I thought it was so well written. And then you have Azrael in there between the two women that are like, you know, they're going on this adventure through these underground caves that they didn't know existed underneath the prison. And you have the shadow wielder, the very quiet, kind of soft-spoken shadow wielder. And then you have Nesta, this powerful Valkyrie warrior. And then Bryce from this modern day world who has this sun power, like, and has had to fight for herself tooth and nail in many different ways in her life. And I thought the trio was just unexpected and lovely. Even just having Nesta and Azrael together, I loved seeing the two of them. We had so much time with them, because usually we get a lot of Nesta and Cassian, a lot of Nesta and her sisters and her friends, but we don't get Nesta and Azrael as much. And I love their dynamic, and seeing the care that they have for each other was just lovely, and the respect they have for each other also, as like, you know, Nesta kind of made some things of like, yeah, he's like a shadow wielder, like in a like mad respect way of like kind of trying to intimidate Bryce, but I don't know, I read so much respect in between it, and I loved seeing the two of them together. I used a lot of curse words in this, so I'm not going to read that to you, but my first note was Nessa right out the gate using her power, hell yes, because she just, oh my gosh, you see her power. We got a bit of it in the end of her book, in the end of Silver Flames, but not to see her now as this like just kind of swaggering soldier, you know, of like, she's very embodied in that, was incredible. And the moment that got me, she uses the mask. I also just love that, like, okay, cool, like Nesta just has access to all of these dread trove things that she captured in her book, but her using the mask to defeat the worm when they're down in the tunnels, and Azriel trying to get her out of that state because it kind of takes over her mental state. And the thing that brings her back is Nyx, her nephew. I immediately started, I wrote page 158, I'm already crying, because it was like this moment of him being like, remember Faye, remember Cassian. That's like the first thing is to bring up her love, and then her best friends, and then her sisters, and then he brings up Nyx, and then the description is like the mask tumbles off, and I was like, oh my god, the fact that her nephew is the thing that brought her back to herself. I full body chills, like, oh my god, crying, just beautiful. And that is the beauty of Nesta. For all you haters out there, she is a complex character, and I love that. So anyways, talking about the ACOTAR characters aside, I thought that whole sequence was really cool. I thought it was interesting. At first I was a little frustrated that we were going back and forth to Lunathian, is that how we say it? Lunathian? We were going back and forth to Crescent City, let's just say that. First it was kind of frustrating because I obviously just wanted to be with Bryce, first of all, because she's one of my favorite characters. Nessa's obviously one of my favorite characters, but we were also excited for this crossover that I was like, oh, I just want to be there and like see what's happening. But as I kind of read through it a little bit more and we moved forward and moved on from that, I thought it was really well done, because I think had I just bluntly gone back to Crescent City, I don't know that I would have been as pumped about it. But we were getting little bits here and there with, you know, the boys in the dungeon and Ethan. Do we say it Ethan or Ethan? I think we say it Ethan. With Ethan and Therion as well, you know, getting the little blitz, so that way we could all kind of come together at the same time, which I thought was really cool. I thought that the talk about war dump, oh my gosh, when they finally get underneath the prison, or where, yeah, it's the prison, right? Yeah. When they finally get to the like final spot, which is where the dread trove, or at least was it just the harp, was when Nesta got it, that's where it was hid. When they get to that chamber, and we just get lore dump from Celine and all of the history of how the Asteri had been in Prythian before and were called something else. At that point, the callback to the Dawn Court was really cool, or like at least the like little winks to that, and the fact that the prison was once like this luscious island of their people, and they had so much power, and the Asteri came and they sort of had the same thing. I honestly had a hard time following of like, people were good and then they were bad and they're good and they're bad and they're good and they were bad, and I was like, okay, so whose team are we on right now? Which honestly is kind of great, because at that I would enjoy a more complex character journey than just like good, bad, evil, and good. There was so much lore dump, which I honestly was really glad of, because I think that made the crossover very purposeful and very obvious that this is all very interconnected, and so, which is so cool for us in the future, and I can't wait to see what we get, what happens, what unfolds. Yeah, so I absolutely loved that, and I thought the, you know, meeting the Asteri that was there was interesting. We got a little bit more information from her. I thought that was fascinating. I loved it. It's interesting that Bryce has such, I feel like, Aelin tendencies of like, she's got this big plan but nobody knows, and I found that a little bit frustrating sometimes when I read it. But I don't know if people, I've never been one that is like, called it, I knew you're going to do that. I feel like I'm always kind of falling behind. So if you are and you can see these plans unfolding, you're brilliant. It was a bummer to see her trick Nesta and Azriel, but it was cool to get her back, and then her, you know, interaction with her father. It was interesting. Again, we see this plan that we didn't know about unfold, and the heartbreaking part there is she finds the key to unlock the shackles, because her brother had kept him there to get out of the shackles that his dad put him in when he was younger. Oh, so sad. But anyways, and then her finding her way back home to hunt, which was just stunning. I think Bryce has such a interesting journey throughout this series, and we forget that this all happens over like a year and a half. And so it's crazy to see the just the journey that happens between all of these characters, even like the closeness of Hunt and Bryce and how fast that happens, and how much we see Bryce like become this like brilliant planner and leader, but also like not really a like looking to be a leader of I'm looking to help all of these people, save all of these people. I have to do it. I have the power to do it, so I'm going to do it. So it's not necessarily like I want to lead. It's like I want to make these things happen so that these people can be free. And so I think the journey that she has is pretty wild. And she does some crazy things, and there are some emotional beats that I think obviously could have been better thought out. But for her, but when you think about it, when I really like finished the book and thought about everything that happened and the time frame in which it happened with, of course it's going to be insane. Of course you're going to make some decisions that are not well thought out. Of course you're going to snap at people. Of course you're going to have, you know, emotional moments. And I don't know, I loved the whole thing. I thought Hunt's journey was really interesting. The scenes in the dungeon were heartbreaking with the three men, and obviously really brutal, really brutal. And to see, you know, the journey that they, the bond that they created. And again, I had another thing of page 306, I'm crying again when Rune tells Declan how much he loves him, and as they're escaping from the dungeons, which also that was not even halfway through the book. Like, I was shocked with how much happened in the fact that we had these massively fast action sequences, like not even halfway through the book. But I loved it, honestly, loved it. And with him, you know, we had a lot of, I thought Rune's journey was really interesting. I thought his disdain for Lydia after finding out who she is, I didn't really buy it. But maybe it's because, I don't know, like his absolute frustration of like not believing that that's who Agent Daybreak was. And I think, like, I just didn't really buy it. I didn't really buy how upset he was by that, because he obviously knew her very well at that point. He knew she was like a very high ranking undercover agent. And so for him to be that frustrated was really interesting to me. Because I don't know, I just didn't buy it. Obviously, Lydia's trying to help him out and like speak to him mind to mind, and he's not taking it, and blah, blah, blah. And then they have this big flip, and I don't know, there was a lot of that wasn't, I love Rune. Rune became one of my favorite characters in my reread, and just in the beginning of that, I was like, who's this guy? Come on. But, you know, I guess in another way that could be really justified, then, and I'm sure that just my journey, I didn't really buy it. Anyways, the whole escape was crazy. And that's where we really got so much of Lydia, and I'm glad we got some Lydia POV moments, because she's such an interesting character, and I'm seeing her being set up for like a lot more in the future. So me, like many other people, absolutely obsessed with Lydia. I think she's my favorite new character. Rune became my favorite character in my reread. Lydia became my favorite character in this new book, and I think many people have that same feeling. She's just such a cool, complex character. I love the, you know, complete juxtaposition of her position with the Asteri, and I'm honestly like shocked how long that lasted. Like, she was able to like be that deep undercover, and I just think her character is so cool. The shifter side of her in the scene with the escape from the prison, with her shifting into her form, was literally breathtaking. Like, oh my gosh, so crazy. And obviously we got some info that she's related to some of our favorite characters from Throne of Glass. That was thrown in later on in the book, and I was like, of course, like somebody here, like that has to happen. There has to be that connection. And we got the information that I think she's Brandon's, like that's an ancestor of hers, which is so cool. I love the connections. I love a multiverse situation. And I thought her and Rune's, you know, growth in a relationship was really interesting. It wasn't perfect, but what relationship is, especially in the high stakes fantasy world. And but I love Rune, and I kind of, like I said earlier, I was not like quite 100% on his journey with that. Like the character that I had in my head, the way that he put himself out into the world, like a lot of his reactions weren't quite what I expected them to be, but you know, that's the beauty of reading a fictional world, and this is the author's creation, and not quite mine. So to see like that character grow in a different way was really interesting. I hated his decision to take Lydia out of the game when she's saving her sons later on. I was like, oh no, we're not doing this kind of man behavior of like, I've got to save you, like you can't be a part of the action, so I have to make sure you're taken out of it, like blah blah blah, always keep you safe. And I'm like, oh, I hate that. It's so frustrating to me. I did not expect that coming from Rune, especially because I think Rune has so many similarities to Rhys, and I think Rhys definitely has that, but always is very empowered to allow the people that he loves to take on the roles that they feel inspired to take on. So yeah, I don't know, I wasn't like in love with that. I do think him and Lydia are a very interesting couple, and I like them a lot. I wanted to root for them a lot. I was rooting for them a lot. I think they're just two very complex characters, and the way that this all rolled out together was really, really fast, but I enjoyed that, and the fact that they're mates, which of course, gotta have a mate, gotta have it. I rolled my eyes at that one a little bit. I know that's a very common thing that we see in Sarah J. Maas worlds is the mates, and I love it. Don't get me wrong, I do love it, but I was like, oh yeah, of course. Okay, of course they're mates. But otherwise, loved it. Loved their dynamic. I love Rune and Deck and Finn. I think their little Three Musketeer found family brother trio is so delightful, and the way that they've brought Therion and Ethan into that is really delightful. Speaking of, I'm going to do this mostly around characters because so much happens in this book, so hopefully when we talk about the characters it'll all just roll out. The one storyline I wasn't sold on that I really kind of disliked, no, I really disliked it, was Ethan's. I thought his relationship with Jezebel was really fun, and I thought that was really interesting. I think she's been a really cool character from the beginning, and then to get more information about her, to know that she's been around literally from the beginning, was really cool, and how she's just trying to protect the library. She's just trying to protect history and the texts and learning, and I think that's so cool in such a like really hardcore cool female character way. I thought that her and Ethan's dynamic was really interesting. Him trying to not be the leader and like not believing that he was to be the leader was very frustrating to me. It was one of those tropes that I felt like it was just like happening over and over again. Like, what? Not me, not poor me. It has to be somebody else. That idea that he held on to happened literally throughout the whole text. And I was like, dude, we've got to like just believe that, like, stop trying to bring Sigrid back to life. Stop trying to bring someone else in to be the leader of the pack. Like, this is so crazy to me that I didn't buy it either, because like we've had this in the back of our heads since like maybe the first book, when the Prime says to Ethan, he's like, you've got Prime energy or something along those lines. So I know this has been hinted at, and I was just found the character's journey with it and consistent, not just denial of it, but just like the idea that he didn't really even think about it. I didn't really buy, and I didn't love. And I was like so exhausted with him continuing to try to put Sigrid on the throne. And Sigrid kind of sucked from the beginning. I like the, you know, the story was really interesting of like, ooh, we have this like secret heir that nobody knew about, but she kind of was not great, and their relationship was a mess. But for him to then like consistently try and bring her back to life, and then when she became a Reaper, he was like, no, we gotta make this happen. It was just, it seemed like such a mess, and it was such a mess, and I didn't buy it. I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it, because it was over and over and over again of this like, you're being hit on the head over and over again with this realization that like, it's just you take up the mantle, you do it. And I found that storyline very frustrating and very hard to read. Similar with Therion's, and I think Therion sort of had that journey in book 2 as well, which was like just making bad choice after bad choice after bad choice. And it's exhausting to read, but in a text which has a bunch of different characters, I think you've got to have a little bit of that to round it out. Not exhausting to read, but characters that aren't always making the right decisions. It makes it definitely more interesting, but it is a little bit exhausting. I am intrigued by Therion's marriage situation. I am curious. I mean, it's definitely going to come up in later texts, but I have a feeling that that's going to be a really good relationship, because we've already kind of gotten hinted at that, which I'm very intrigued by. Action sequences were crazy. There were so many in this book. I do feel like I got a little bit exhausted in the first half, because we had so much action happening, literally like one right after the other, after the other, after the other, up until the second half of the book. And then I slowed down a lot in my reading, because I do think I was exhausted, and the book kind of slowed down. So it kind of felt like there was a bit of a stall, and I'm even having trouble like remembering what happens in the beginning, in the middle of the book, because I just think it was so much action happening. There was so much action in the beginning and it kind of slowed down in the middle, but I was still excited to read it and to see like things were constantly unfolding slowly as we went throughout. And the relationships, I mean, that's what Sarah J. Maas does so well, is make these beautiful, complex relationships. And I think the character growth is so fascinating as well. It's not always as fast, I think, as people want it to be, but that's what I enjoy about Sarah J. Maas's writing. Again, of like going back to Court of Silver Flames and like Nesta, or even like a character like Bryce who has similarities to Nesta. It's like, it's not gonna be all daisies and rainbows like from zero to like enlightened. It's just not. That's not a realistic journey. And I think these characters do so much. And I think Sarah J. Maas writes a lot of those journeys in a really, you know, semi-realistic, as realistic as you can get in a fae world, but like an emotionally realistic way, I think. And I enjoy that, and I like, you know, going through it, even the stuff that I found hard or frustrating to read. That's why I enjoy these books. That's why I enjoy the way she writes, because I feel like I can have more patience with myself and other humans, taking a minute to do the right thing, or to figure out what the right thing is, even for them or for the people. And this, you know, there's so much pressure in a world like this in which they literally are just saving universes in such a short amount of time. And, you know, I think there's a lot of really intense emotions that happen, like when Bryce gets frustrated with Hunt for not being 100% on her page. And I read that and I was like, wow, I kind of am glad we're getting a little bit of this heads clashing, because it very would be in that case of this person who came from a background of slavery and serving people, and then having a rebellion and seeing it go badly, and seeing the people that he loved and cared about hurt. And then Bryce is over here being like, well, I have to do the right thing. I'm not thinking about that. I'm not worried about that. I can't be worried about that, because I just have to do the right thing. I know how to free the people of this world. I know how to get rid of this parasitic presence. I know how to get rid of the bad guys. And so her point of view is very much like, well, there's no other way. I can't worry. Me worrying is frustrating. And so I see the frustration with her and Hunt, of Hunt's hesitation. I do think that he kind of gave in a little bit faster than I would have believed, but I think that the confrontation between the two of them made sense, and I'm glad we got a little bit of it. I think it could have been drawn out maybe a bit more, but I thought it was good. I thought it was interesting getting Hunt's background with, you know, being a descendant of hell, and I hope we go more into that in future books. We obviously did in our final battle. We got a lot of like Avengers Assemble moments, kind of, which I think we'll probably get even more so in later books now that we have these worlds connected, and I cannot wait. We had a little bit of that in the Crescent City world this time around, of seeing everybody kind of do what they're best at and trip and fumble throughout, but the teams coming in, and how much this found family of warriors has taken so much on their shoulders and make everything happen. I thought the final battle was really interesting. I wasn't like the imagery of kind of like the space battle portal situation with Bryce, you know, releasing all of the Asteri into essentially nothingness. That was a hard one. It felt like kind of like out of nowhere. Not really out of nowhere, but I was like, oh cool, we're in space. Like, whoa, space. And I do think that the emotional state her and Hunt were in at the end made that final battle even more interesting, of the two of them, and him, you know, coming in, obviously having to save her or go into nothingness with her, because there was no other option for them emotionally. So I thought it was interesting, but I wasn't like ready for it when it hit me. But I am glad that it's very much like, okay, we're on to the next phase of Crescent City. And I don't remember how many books are coming out. I know there's more ACOTAR books, and I'm assuming there's going to be at least one more Crescent City book, because we've got all the houses except for one. So I'm intrigued to see. I love the idea of them like starting fresh. Where are they going to go? How are they? Is Bryce really going to take up this, you know, leadership mantle? Is like, what's going to be next? I'm really curious to see what's next for this world. Oh my gosh, I didn't even talk about Fury and Juniper. I can't wait for their wedding. I'm obsessed with them. Period. Period. And I like their involvement, and I love you know, Bryce's found family within them and how much they take care of her. I did not read all of the bonus chapters because I didn't have access to all the books. I know there's a way, I know I should be able to get them now. So I read the Barnes & Noble bonus chapter, and then I read the Walmart bonus chapter. I haven't read the rest of them yet, but hopefully I can get my hands on them. Thought they were, I mean, it was nice. It's always nice to have, not necessarily always an epilogue or like, but like a past, like kind of a little peek into scenes from the past that we didn't get. Oh, I enjoyed them. I do find it a little frustrating that you have to get your hands on different versions of the book, but I understand it from a marketing standpoint. So overall, I literally had a great time. I had such a great time. I'm such an emotional reader. Like, I have a hard time reading books because I just feel like I'm so emotional, and I think I have it in my head that I need to read them like from an educational standpoint, or like the prose or the languaging or the blah, but like I read to escape. I read to have fun, and so I'm often very emotional with the, you know, my final thoughts on a book. And this one was great. I cried, I laughed. I always cackle in Crescent City books, like they catch me off guard. I had a great time, so I would highly recommend it. I rated, ooh, what should we rate this one out of? Oh gosh, worms, star swords. Yeah. I mean, there were so many pieces that were important to this. Let's do star swords. So I gave this one 5 out of 5 star swords. I'm laughing at myself because like it wasn't a perfect book, but I had a great time reading it, and I would highly recommend this series, especially if you like fantasy and you're into reading a modern fantasy world. I'd never read an urban fantasy before these books, and it took me a minute to get on base with it, to get on board with it, because I just had never read anything like it before. But I really, really enjoyed it. Once I got into it, my reread of the first 2 books, I enjoyed them 10 times more because I love the characters, and that's the beauty. So if world building isn't quite for you, if you get a little overwhelmed with that, I implore you to give these a try and just allow yourself to sink into the characters. Anyways, all that being said, had a great time with this book. I love it. I would highly recommend. 5 out of 5 star swords. It didn't stop. It barely stopped. It was exhausting, but I had a great time. So for me, that's what I'm going to rate it for. I had a great time reading this. I love this series. I love this author. I love everything she writes. Was it a perfect book? No. But did I have the time of my life reading it? Absolutely. So that's my thoughts on Crescent City, House of Flame and Shadow. What did you guys think? I know there are so many different opinions about it, and I would love to chat about it with you. Put them in the comments. I'll make sure Robby doesn't read these ones, so try to stay spoiler free, or like send me a DM. Send us a DM on Instagram. I'm in charge of our Instagram, so check us out at Bookworm Couple on Instagram and TikTok and everywhere else. Robby's reading Sarah J. Maas right now. He's reading Throne of Glass, so eventually we'll get to Akatar and Crescent City. So if you want to see his opinions on it as well, make sure you guys like and subscribe. We're so grateful for you watching, and I'm so grateful to have this community to chat books about, because books are magic, they're wonderful escapes, and what a beautiful connection to other people who enjoy that. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you on our next adventure.